her mother, Heidi, who is here with us tonight. Sandra is I can't even understand much of this. So Sandra, you're going to have to fill us in. She is an executive strategist and systems thinker, a CEO and founder of 10Power, and she's applying disruptive innovation to create a regenerative future. Now, before launching 10Power, she scaled AutoGrid from prototype to a global brand, creating automated intelligence out of big data from the smart grid. Prior to that, as co-founder and president and COO of energy efficiency company PowerZoa, she brought building management hardware and software tools to the market. Sandra has also served as the CEO of a software company producing the world's first mathematically lossless video codec. She worked at Pacific Gas and Electric implementing the Climate Smart program and has consulted with clients that include Mitsubishi, the Transamerica Holding Company, and the San Francisco Foundation. She has an MBA in Sustainable Business from Presidio Graduate School and a BA in Political Science and Visual Arts from Emory University. Sandra is the daughter of the former Austin Symphony Orchestra's conductor, Sandra Kwak and Heidi Kwak, and she is a native of Austin. Her TED Talk on Fourth World Nation Building is available on YouTube. Sandra, welcome, and maybe you can explain some of those things that in the introduction that I haven't a clue what they are.
Well, we'll get into it. Thank you so much for having me, Phoebe. And I want to also add that Phoebe's classroom at Montessori School was the place where I first learned about climate change in the library. And Phoebe had an amazing garden and chickens out behind the school. And it was just such an incredible learning environment where we could just walk around this classroom full of resources and follow our curiosities. And when I first read about climate change, I was in 4th grade, and it immediately just hit me like that this thing is happening and that we have to act on it now. And I really, it's part of my formative story that I discovered that in your classroom thanks to your instruction, Phoebe. And I really, really appreciate the trajectory that you set me out on ever since I was a little girl in your class.
Thank you, Sandra.
We usually begin meetings with a land acknowledgement. So I'll do a land acknowledgement that I'm familiar with since I live in San Francisco, which is unceded territory of the Ohlone people, specifically in the SF Peninsula. This was the heritage lands of the Ramaytush people. And these tribes are very much still active members of our community. And there is a lot that we have to learn in terms of returning to a regenerative relationship with nature from the tribes who lived for thousands or to tens of thousands of years with a regenerative relationship with the land.
Mm-hmm.
So as Phoebe mentioned, my name is Sandra Kwak, and I'm the founder and CEO of 10Power, which is a certified benefit corporation working on renewable energy access internationally. I'm also a board member of the Foundation for Climate Restoration. So I'll talk a little bit about climate restoration. And thirdly, I am an organizer with Extinction Rebellion. So I'll share a little bit about what we're up to with Extinction Rebellion. And all of this ties into my theory of fourth world regenerative development, which y'all can check out in the TED Talk, which a link was shared in this invitation for this event tonight. And basically, I see it as my life's mission to reverse climate change in my time on planet Earth and to create a trajectory for regenerative development. So sometime around the Industrial Revolution, I feel like humans started to go this way. Meanwhile, evolution is continuing in this direction. And we all know what happens to species that veer too far off the course of evolution, right? So I think it's up to the humans who are alive right now to just tilt us around to start getting back on track so that we eventually reemerge with natural systems that we are biologically a part of. This is my company, 10Power, and our mission is 100% renewables for 100% of humanity by the year 2050. The way that we accomplish this is through renewable energy, project development, and finance in places that don't have access to electricity, mainly in Haiti, which is the place where we've launched the business and where we're currently growing. I've been working in Haiti since 2015, and we have been focused on large-scale commercial solar projects where we source capital so that customers can pay us back over time. And we also work directly with local solar installers with an empowerment lens focused on women's empowerment and helping to create gender parity within the marketplace. We work very closely with our local solar installer partners, and our goal is to build regenerative green economies in places that today do not have equitable access to resources. This is a map that I created as I was first launching 10Power. And on this map, you can see the intensity of energy poverty in different countries across the world. The more intensely red, the higher the percentage of the population without access to electricity. And you can see Haiti is the only red dot in the Americas, where close to 70% of the population doesn't have access to electricity. Now, what's interesting about this map is that when you overlay renewable energy generation potential, the places with the highest energy poverty in the world actually have the most abundant sunshine. It's kind of the curse of colonialism. When the earth was centrifuging, a lot of resources wound up close to the equator. And so places that have been really damaged by colonialism, by capitalism, by resource extraction are actually places that have the most abundant potential for the renewable energy revolution. Now, the people in these places who have benefited the least from combustion of fossil fuels and natural resources, exploitation, the places that are really on the front lines of climate change are also the places that are the most vulnerable to the coronavirus and to COVID-19, to the pandemic. And as we're seeing in communities all over the world, right here at home and abroad, this compounding pandemic of colonialism, capitalism, climate change, racism has really left frontline communities high and dry. These are the communities that have contributed the least to climate change and that are suffering the most right now. And so there's also what I like to call kind of a free market reparations aspect to my work. Now, the market conditions in Haiti are similar to a lot of other places that lack access to electricity. Because there's not consistent grid access and because most of the population doesn't even have access to the grid, almost all businesses are running on dirty diesel generators, which are incredibly expensive, especially when diesel is imported to island communities. And they generate not only exorbitant amounts of CO2, but also other hazardous particulate matter that's linked to lung cancer and asthma and other diseases, which, as you can imagine, in this pandemic, which impacts respiratory health, is incredibly damaging for the population. 10Power's business model is threefold. We bring in project development, so we focus on international codes and standards to help train people up and to make sure that all of our installations are done with the highest quality. We source finance that's appropriate for our customers. So in Haiti, as well as many other markets, finance is the big missing piece. So while people know that there's abundant sunshine in Haiti, very few businesses can afford the total amount up front. Whereas if they have monthly payments, they can save month to month. And the third leg of our offering is local ecosystems. So we're really focused on training up women and men from the community to be able to do the ongoing operations and maintenance. And this is a big differentiator. When I first came to Haiti, I started looking at solar projects that have been done oftentimes with the best of intent, charitable projects that have been grant funded. But if there's not attention to the long-term operations and maintenance budget, and how that project is going to be maintained over time, eventually the assets degrade. And so the main difference between success and failure long-term of these solar projects is if the community feels ownership and has a stake in the project, and if there's a local number that you can call if something goes wrong. Our revenue streams at 10Power come from two things: from project developer fees, so we charge a markup on the equipment and installation, and also a percentage of interest on the solar loans. So we return money to investors with a percentage that goes back to them, and then we have a small percentage markup that comes back to 10Power, which we reinvest in more solar projects. Now, Haiti is a place with incredible natural resources. Imagine a beautiful tropical island with aquamarine water and white sand. But instead of these huge resorts like Sandals, which are dumping waste and extracting and taking advantage of the local resources and population, Haiti really has this raw, undeveloped beauty. They actually are home to the largest cloud forest in the Caribbean and the Haitian mountains. Haiti is also a place with incredible embodied potential, human resources, people who are working so incredibly hard. You know, every parent's goal in Haiti is to be able to send their kids to school, which is a lot more expensive than in the United States. And as Phoebe mentioned, my dad, Sandra Kwak, he's actually from South Korea. And I learned from him actually pretty recently after I started 10Power that when he was a little boy, South Korea was incredibly difficult. It was one of the poorest countries on the planet. And seeing the trajectory of South Korea just within my dad's generation, going from one of the poorest countries on the planet to a global leader with major global brands like Samsung, Hyundai, second largest shipbuilding port in the world, but also an innovator in green technology. You know the music video Oppa Gangnam Style? That was actually filmed in an area that has been completely dedicated to green infrastructure, to waterways, to walkways, and a completely walkable community. And so South Korea, being one of the most urban dense populations and places on the planet, is doing a lot of innovation and efficiency in green architecture. And I see that same trajectory for development being possible for Haiti. So it all kind of clicked to me when my dad told me that story about Korea's trajectory to success. And I see that same embodied potential in Haiti to be the next South Korea. Haiti is also a place with abundant solar potential. So the solar irradiation in Haiti is actually 1.5 times the amount of solar irradiation in Arizona, which is the sunniest place in the United States. So we've created an analysis of the Haiti market, which is currently at a commercial market cap of 675 million. We currently are talking to customers worth 100 million. And the cool thing about renewable energy is that when you're creating economic opportunity with renewable energy, people will use more over time. So if that's coming from regenerative, non-polluting sources, then it creates a net win-win-win for the environment, for the economy, and for people's livelihoods. We also are focused on the human development potential. So it's not just about return on investment for us, it's about social return on investment, SROI. These are women from the Women's Solar Installer Training Program that we've launched in Haiti on one of our installations. So here are a couple of our projects. This project is a project that spans a couple of different water purification facilities that we financed for another social impact organization called Dlo IT. Dlo means water in Creole. And for this project, the customer will experience over $200,000 worth of cumulative savings over the lifespan of the panels, which we estimate to be 20 years, but they actually live a lot longer. Dlo Haiti at these water kiosk locations employs 104 employees, 37 of them are women. They're providing free water for school children, and they have 600 resellers of water at a below market rate, and the majority of these resellers are women. So they're creating microeconomies all around them. And we predict that over the lifespan of the project, there will be close to 1 million pounds of carbon dioxide reduction, equivalent to over 11,000 trees planted. This is one of our flagship projects, 10Power completed in 2018. We provided solar and energy storage for UNICEF Haiti's headquarters. And this project is creating over $3 million in savings over its lifetime. UNICEF obviously has incredible human impacts for children, babies, women, and education. And this project will save over 18 million pounds of carbon dioxide, equivalent to over 200,000 trees planted and growing for 10 years. Now, at the time of installation, this UNICEF project was actually the largest solar installation on any UNICEF base in the entire world. And we're really proud that we are demonstrating multiple UN Sustainable Development Goals in Haiti, one of the least developed nations on the planet. And this ties into my philosophy that it's actually the places that are on the front lines of climate change that will lead in adoption of renewable energy and sustainable technologies, because the need is there in the community. You're not trying to uproot legacy technologies. Like in the United States, you're contending with utilities, you're contending with a lot of entrenched forces. Whereas in Haiti, people are just ready to adopt. They're hungry for new technology. And I think that down the line, we may actually see a lot of south to north technology transfer, where it's in these frontline communities that we're seeing the most innovation and the fastest adoption. And so as we are dealing with climate change impacts coming from south to north, we'll actually be looking to these former frontline communities for answers and solutions. Now, are folks here familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Thumbs up, sideways. So the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or UN SDGs, are a set of 17 goals produced by the UN. And this was actually a refresh on the Millennium Development Goals, which we didn't meet by the millennia. And they have created a really wonderful and detailed framework that spans from poverty and hunger, clean water, energy, economic growth, taking care of life on water, life and land, and partnership for the goals. And there's really a robust suite of metrics behind each one of these. And these have been really a galvanizing force for both the impact investment community as well as social impact enterprises to finally have some type of standardization of what it means in terms of impact. Because in sustainable business, we're really trying to invent a lot of new ways of doing business. It's not just about the single bottom line. It's not just about money. It's about people. It's about planet. It's about the triple bottom line. But these are softer metrics to measure, right? A dollar is a dollar, but how do you actually measure, saving a human life or saving an animal's life? So having the standardized set of metrics has been really helpful for the impact investment community to have some unifying ability to gauge ourselves and gauge progress by. And 10Power is focused on multiple UN Sustainable Development Goals, namely number 1, no poverty, number 5, gender equality, number 7, renewable energy access for all, and number 13, climate action now. So we're really proud to be achieving these in Haiti. And another project that we completed during the pandemic in partnership with Give Power, which is Solar City and Tesla's nonprofit, is solar for a water desalination plant on the island of La Gonave. And Haiti is shaped like this. It's kind of shaped like a mouth, and La Gonave is an island off the coast of Haiti that's right here in the mouth of Haiti. And this project was initially grant funded, and then the water is sold at a below market rate, which enables community to staff it, and there's an ongoing operations and maintenance budget that's generated from the water that's sold. So this project is providing clean drinking water for up to 40,000 people. We went live shortly after the beginning of shelter in place. And so we're really happy that we're able to provide this crucial basic human rights resource for folks in the midst of the pandemic. And that the island of La Gonave has to import fewer plastic bottles and can provide clean drinking water where the communities were formerly often forced to drink brackish water. And with this project, we expanded our Women's Solar Installer Training Program. This was a program that we launched with the UNICEF project in partnership with Haiti Tech University, which is one of the leading technical universities in Haiti, and also was partially funded by the Solar Electric Light Funds, acronym of which is SELF. And just a peek at our upcoming pipeline projects, one of the projects that we're working on the engineering for right now is with a hospital called Geskio, which is right now one of the frontline COVID response hospitals in Haiti. Geskio was actually launched in 1983 as the major AIDS research center in the Latin Caribbean area. And they brought the reinfection rate of AIDS from 90% down to below 10% in a couple of years in Haiti. So they've really been doing incredible things in terms of epidemics. And so now obviously they're tasked with COVID. And so it's hypercritical that we help them get off of diesel generators and onto renewable energy. This will be an energy storage and solar project. And another company that we're working with is a Haitian-owned vaccine distributor called Haiti Medicine. And Haiti medicine actually right now does not have enough power to do refrigerated or cold vaccines. They're only able to do unrefrigerated vaccines because they have frequent blackouts. And so, I mean, maybe a year ago, this would have been kind of an abstract concept, but as we can all identify with now, with the COVID vaccines needing to be refrigerated at sub-zero temperatures, it's really mission critical to have electricity for public health and wellness. Another initiative which we just launched right before the holidays is our donor advised fund. So one of the challenges as an impact organization has been finding appropriate financing in markets, because oftentimes investors, especially venture capitalists, are just looking for market rate returns and huge multiples on their capital. So they want to invest $1 today and see $10 a year from now, which isn't really appropriate for the types of markets and the types of projects that we're doing. And so we have launched this new donor advised fund, which enables us as a for-profit social impact organization to receive charitable contributions. And these charitable contributions create tax benefits for the donors. We will use the money in the donor advised fund to underwrite our investments in places like Haiti that are inherently risky, where traditional investors may not want to put their money. And the minimum contribution to the donor advised fund is $5,000. It also accepts transfers from other donor advised funds. And we've launched it with Impact Assets, which is a really progressive organization that's figured out all of the SEC regulations to be able to invest this type of capital into companies like ours that are really working impact first to create a better world to live in. And if folks are interested, we have a white paper, which we just launched for the donor advised fund, which talks about the issues with donor advised funds, which is one of the fastest growing financial instruments right now. But some of the issues with them are that people can get the tax breaks immediately, but they don't actually have to spend the money in any type of time frame. So there's over $100 billion sitting in DAFs right now, that oftentimes if they're with a more traditional brokerage like Fidelity or Schwab, they're just getting reinvested in Wall Street and the brokerage is keeping the returns. So the money that people got a charitable write-off for is actually perpetuating the problems that it was intended to solve, which is why they got that tax break. So we are publishing this white paper open source, and we are planning on publishing the paperwork that we use to develop the DAF open source as well, so that other social impact organizations can utilize this financial mechanism. We want to help in the spirit of co-opetition as opposed to competition. We want to help the entire market ecosystem to thrive. And funding is really one of the crucial missing pieces right now in the social impact ecosystem. And so anytime we crack a code, we want to be able to share it with our peers to make sure that more companies are able to grow and reach scale and solve the world's problems. And looking ahead, right now we're working on a couple of different strategic initiatives. I'm excited to be exploring community solar with tribes. So we're talking with a couple of different organizations right now that are working with tribal reservations. And as I started diving into the energy access issues on tribes, I've come to realize that a lot of our neighbors here in the United States still don't have access to running water, basic sanitation, or electricity. So you don't have to look overseas. You don't have to look far at all to find energy equity issues. And we're really excited to be expanding domestically soon. Now, I really see energy as a fundamental building block for every single other aspect of human development and human potential, ranging from life or death, clean water, all the way to self-actualization, to education, to sessions like we're having right now with assistance of electricity and the internet. So for 10Power, it doesn't just stop at electricity. It's really all about all of the different regenerative and resilient services that electricity provides and makes available to communities. And all of this ties into my philosophy of fourth world development, which is that we're doing development backwards, right? If everybody aspires to live an American's lifestyle, will require more than 5 planet Earths to survive. And so I really think that instead of everybody trying to be first world, we should all be going the opposite direction, just like tech 3.0, 4.0. So if all of us are trying to be fourth world and fifth world, then maybe it's the countries that we today consider third world countries that are the closest, because people are still living close to nature. They haven't forgotten, what it looks like to go and get water from the stream. And transitioning now, I want to talk a little bit about the Foundation for Climate Restoration, of which I'm a board member. And the Foundation for Climate Restoration also is in the vein of regenerative and sustainable development. And what we are focused on at the foundation is promoting restoration as the third leg of the climate stool. So a lot of policy ranging from the local level to the UN level is focused on just two things: mitigation and adaptation. So how do we build higher seawalls? How do we move people out of areas that are experiencing sea level rise, drought, forest fires? And what's left out of this conversation is what it would actually look like to restore a healthy climate like we had 100 years ago. So what would it actually take for humans to be a net beneficial resource that is participating with our ecology? And we work across three different arms. We have a solutions arm, we have an advocacy arm, and we have an education arm. And we're very open to different partnerships. We have several partnerships at the UN level. We have many partnerships with companies, and our main thrust is helping people who are restoring the climate and helping to get climate restoration actively into dialogue. And towards the end of last year, Pope Francis actually produced an article about climate restoration. So we're really proud that it's starting to get out there. And in terms of solutions, we use a scientific vetting process to make sure that solutions are permanent, scalable, and financeable. So what's it actually going to take to start moving markets in this direction? And a couple of examples of the types of solutions that the Foundation for Climate Restoration promotes are synthetic limestone. So actually the new terminal of the San Francisco airport was built out of synthetic limestone, which harvests more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than it produces. Building aggregates are one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions globally. And so the synthetic limestone uses recycled aggregate from demolished buildings, can actually be generated on site. So it does away with the emissions that are associated with transportation, and can pull sum total, looking at market projections by 2030, can pull a total of 50 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year out of the atmosphere. So imagine transitioning all of our building materials to carbon harvesting materials. Another solution that we're looking at is ocean ecosystem restoration. And photosynthesis in the ocean is different than plants on land, because plants on land harvest carbon while they're alive, but then once they die, they either rot, releasing that carbon back into the atmosphere, or they burn, releasing carbon a lot faster into the atmosphere. Whereas in the ocean, plants photosynthesize and then they sink and take carbon dioxide to the bottom of the ocean. So they can actually store carbon for millennia on the seafloor. Hence, the ocean provides potentially 10 times more photosynthesis and carbon harvesting potential than land does. So with intentional management, with just 1 to 2% of the ocean, we could potentially restore our entire climate on planet Earth. And policy is, of course, a really important proponent, and I greatly appreciate all the work that y'all are doing in Austin on policy. It's funny how all the technology and the solutions probably already exist, right? Just reading Project Drawdown, we can see how many amazing solutions just need to be scaled in the world, but it's always seemingly humans that are getting in our own way in terms of actually bringing these solutions to bear. So policy thrust through 2050 and beyond is a really important component of what the foundation is focused on. And seeing our carbon dioxide levels drop below 300 parts per million by 2050. So our founder, Peter Fikowski, is actually an investor in 10Power also. And he's additionally a physicist with 27 patents, went to MIT, super brilliant scientist. And what Peter always says is, if you want to go to Hawaii, you would say, I want to go to Hawaii in August. I'm going to buy a plane ticket, and you'll probably wind up there. right? But if you want to go to Hawaii and you don't make a plan and you just say start heading west out in the Pacific Ocean, you're probably not going to get to Hawaii. So having really ambitious targets and being very, very clear about where we want to end up will help us to probably and certainly land there. But if we have ambiguous targets, if we're not being clear about what we're trying to achieve, then the probability is very low that we'll actually arrive there. So below 300 ppm by 2050 is an ambitious target that we're galvanizing communities and governments around. And that is the Foundation for Climate Restoration. If y'all are interested, you can learn more at f4cr.org. And yeah, I'm happy to collaborate more on that front with Sierra Club. And the third thing I wanted to talk about today is an exciting movement that I've been doing organizing with, which y'all, we were talking about a little bit earlier today. Most people have probably heard about it, Extinction Rebellion. And the thing that drew me to Extinction Rebellion is the acknowledgement of just how heavy all of this really is. You know, when we think about the fact that human beings, you know, as such a selfish species, are killing other species on the planet at such a rapid rate, and this is something that we actually have a choice about. You know, just looking at our own mortality as a species in the eye. It's important that we take the levity into account, but also action is a really powerful anecdote for this grief. California has been particularly intense over the last couple of years, and it's just getting worse and worse. You know, as we're seeing these accelerating feedback loops with forests being burned and more CO2, more heat, more fire, worse air quality. It really feels like we're over the tipping point, you know, in terms of climate change. So I've really been enjoying the aspects of public arts and public action that Extinction Rebellion has brought to bear. And I'm going to skip over some of this negative stuff because you guys are probably intimately familiar with a lot of the cascading impacts of climate change that we're already witnessing right now. And I'm going to fast forward to the inspiring portion. So within Extinction Rebellion, we're focused on 4 major demands. The first is that our governments tell the truth and declare a climate emergency. The second is that we go carbon neutral by 2025. The next is that we create a citizens assembly for climate and ecology. So we don't depend just on our leaders, but that citizens are helping to make these decisions. And the fourth is that we create a just transition that prioritizes frontline communities and that we follow BIPOC lead, and we're really prioritizing the most vulnerable populations. And the way that we do this is through nonviolent direct action. So drawing upon other social movements. We are respectful, we are disruptive, and we are sacrificial. So Extinction Rebellion has really been a lot of fun for me. It's one of the fastest growing climate movements right now. It was born in the UK in 2018 and has spread all over the world. Here's a New York action. This I just grabbed off of the Austin Facebook, some banner drops during the pandemic. LA and San Francisco, we've been focused on a lot of different initiatives. Right now, Line 3 is a big one that we're galvanizing around nationally. And we have chapters all over the world. So it's been a fun and engaging way to really deal with a lot of the gravity of climate and the fact that we're in the 6th mass extinction. And one of the roles that I play within our chapter is an allyship. And so I'm excited about collaborating and coordinating with other organizations. And I would welcome further conversation around how we can join up with Sierra Club and really work on initiatives together to help grow the movement and get stuff done. So that's a little bit about my work. And yeah, I welcome any questions or comments or discussion that y'all have. Thanks again so much for having me.
I'd like to start. I can't express how powerful, how impressed I am with all the stuff you're doing for the climate. This is really remarkable. And in most of the climate action, even though there are billions of people outside the developed countries who are getting hurt worse by climate than we are, most of the work is focused just on the developed countries, and you have really expanded. We need thousands more. Do you see a pathway to getting more of these resources to the rest of the world that is being left behind? And what would that pathway be?
I do. And you know what's so exciting is that there are companies similar to 10Power that are popping up every day. So in our ecosystem, there are young entrepreneurs who are starting companies, you know, straight out of school, who are really passionate about the same issues that 10Power is working on. When I first started this company in 2015, there were 1.6 billion people without access to electricity. When I checked the stats today, that number was down to 785 million. So we have actually halved the number of people without access to electricity in the last 5 years. Now, what's crucial is that that electricity access comes from renewable sources. So there are a lot of other competing interests, you know, as places like China is cutting back on coal, the United States is cutting back on coal. So where are those coal exporters trying to export to? You know, the United States discovered vast resources of natural gas. Where are they trying to export to? The Caribbean is a place where a natural gas lobby is very strong, and they're trying to get people to build natural gas fired power plants as opposed to installing renewable energy power plants. So we are up against some very large fossil fuel interests when it comes to energy access. But I'm heartened every day, you know, meeting new peers in this space by the passion, dedication, and the fact that, you know, it's not rocket science. Solar already exists. The price of solar is coming down every day. The price of storage is starting to drop as well, which has really been a big, it's the most expensive component of our systems is energy storage. And so beginning to see battery prices dropping is going to have huge impacts on renewable energy accessibility across the world, especially in off-grid scenarios where you can't use the utility grid as a backup battery. I think we're headed in the right direction. And really, it's the business models. We just need business models. The technology already exists. People know that solar makes sense. We just need more businesses like 10Power that are out there that are helping to connect the dots to get these communities onto renewables.
We have a small enough group, if you have a question, unmute yourself and just start asking it. And if you have trouble getting in, raise your hand or put something in the chat and we'll try to call on you specifically. So are there any other questions or comments right now?
I'm impressed that you're thinking of going into the Native American communities. What about other countries? Are you leaving that up to these other companies that are coming in, or do you have plans eventually to hit some of the other companies, other countries that, like Haiti, have so little access to energy?
You know, it's funny, when I first started 10Power, I'm writing my business plan. I'm like, all right, year 1, Haiti, year 2, Sub-Saharan Africa, year 3, Southeast Asia. And the challenges of being on the ground are so real. Haiti has been incredibly difficult. And granted, I knew that Haiti was one of the hardest places in the world to do business when I launched there. But the realities are much more right here for me. You know, after trying to grow the business in Haiti for 5 years and doing some successful projects, I'm personally feeling a little more focused on being closer to home, especially with the pandemic. But that's not to say that it's out of the question that we'll grow in other regions and in other countries as well. One of the key things that we look for in a new market is partnerships. So it's really crucial that we have strong local partnerships and that we have solid local partners. So for me, where I'm expanding the business to is really about where I can create strong community partnerships and strong business partnerships. So yeah, I'm following right now a blend of kind of metrics driven strategic analysis, but then also a lot softer side, like people, relationships, building, like being able to blend both the hard metrics as well as the more qualitative side of strategy in terms of where we expand to.
And if someone wanted to make a donation or contribution or investment somehow to either the 10Power in Haiti or to one of these Native American groups, how would you go about that? I know there was something mentioned about a donor advisory fund that has a $5,000 minimum, but is that actually 10Power or is that a separate entity?
So the donor advised fund was launched by 10Power in partnership with the founding investors who put the initial capital in there. So that is a renewable energy access fund that we helped create, and that fund is earmarked for renewable energy access projects in Haiti and also in the United States in communities that don't have equal access to electricity. We currently, that would be the best way to contribute. But I can keep folks posted if people are interested. We may do a fundraise for a specific project where people could contribute smaller amounts. So for example, for a health clinic or for a water access project, we may have opportunity in the future to do something similar to a crowd fund or crowd raise for projects like that. Thanks for asking.
Sure.
I have, this is Dick Kellerman, Sarah, Sandra. It's, financing is always a problem, I'm sure. And in fact, you were just talking about that. But you used the phrase once or twice that seemed interesting to me and thought might be a place where we could open up new ways of financing. And I think the phrase was triple bottom line. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Yeah. So triple bottom line is, instead of just profit, which is the single bottom line, expanding that into people, planet, and profit. So triple bottom line companies focus on uplifting communities, on being good stewards to the people that they hire. A lot of triple bottom line companies are also certified benefit corporations, which is a nice set of metrics that businesses can abide by to make sure that they're upholding all of these promises. And it's triple bottom line, I see as close to the cutting edge in terms of sustainable business. What a lot of larger companies are talking about is ESG, or environmental social governance, or CSR, corporate social responsibility. All these TLAs, three-letter acronyms in this space. But I feel that triple bottom line more fully encompasses in the DNA of the business, the people side of the equation and the planet side of the equation, because environmental and social governance and corporate social responsibility are a little bit more open to interpretation, and have in some cases been used for more greenwashing. So yeah, there's a whole suite of different metrics that you can choose from in being a triple bottom line company. And I've also found the UN Sustainable Development Goals to be really helpful in terms of providing metrics for our work, since we're working internationally.
Anything else?
Sorry.
I got one. Example, I saw Haiti, and they're currently on generators, and you're going to introduce solar. From an economic standpoint of the people who were there, you know, trying to run their business or filter their water, how quickly do they see the savings or see the benefits? Obviously, they're going to see the CO2 reductions immediate, but for someone who's in poverty and trying to make something work day to day, how quickly do they see, this is going to help me from a financial perspective versus, you know, running that diesel generator that we all can't stand?
So with finance projects, we try to make their monthly payments equal to or less than what they were paying for their diesel generator and gasoline and maintenance. So we try to structure the finance to where they're seeing benefits from day one. Now, for some projects, like for instance, if you look at the vaccine distributor, they're upgrading their operations. So they previously didn't have refrigeration. So in order for us to get them onto refrigeration, they're going to be significantly upgrading and getting refrigeration, cold rooms, batteries, so that you can make sure that they're staying cold all night. So in that case, they're going to be paying more per month than they were paying previously. But we work with them to try and forecast, you know, if they are able to offer cold vaccines, how much more money are they going to be able to make as a business? So we're helping them to grow their business with the electricity that we're providing and with the upgrades that are happening for their facilities. Now, in the case of the water purification facility, the solar desalination system, that actually had a grant for the initial capital expenditure for the project. So the people who are purchasing the water are only paying a very small amount, and then that money is going towards the operations of the project. So there are a couple of different models that we can use, and for more community-based projects, I really appreciate this charity upfront, and then creating an operations model that works long term. For businesses that are already running diesel generators, we try to price their solar loan so that's equivalent or less to, so that they're making money on the solar from day one. And then, as you mentioned, climate is one consideration, but also reliability is a big consideration too, because diesel generators go down. Sometimes there's not gas available. They require maintenance every 10,000 hours. So diesel generators, you know, frequently will just stop running, and then all of your business operations go down for the time that the generator is down. So having solar increases your reliability, which increases your productivity as well. So that's another big consideration for businesses. I think Leo, yeah, sure thing. I think Leo wanted to say something.
Oh, thanks, Sandra. I was wondering, when did you know that you wanted to start 10Power?
I was working in Silicon Valley at a company called AutoGrid, and we were doing neat stuff with big data. We were helping to balance supply and demand on the grid. So from a carbon savings perspective, it was pretty exciting, but from a social impact perspective, it wasn't really fulfilling for me. So after working for 2 years at AutoGrid, I was kind of noodling on what company I wanted to start next, and thinking I really wanted it to be something that was helping people at the base of the economic pyramid, something that was focused on gender empowerment, renewable energy access. So I didn't have 100% of the pieces in place, but I started with this just big picture idea of what the world that I want to live in looks like. And then I started doing market research around where there was need, and started compiling all that data for the heat map that I made of energy poverty, and then started visiting places with high energy poverty and meeting business owners and talking to people. And that's really how we began building out the business plan, was following the need in the marketplace. And a philosophy that I really like is the humble learner perspective. So especially if you're a foreigner coming into a new market, you know, never assume that you know more than the people who already live there. right? And I've seen this, with people who are coming in with really good intentions. Like people come to Haiti and they're like, oh, I want to teach permaculture. And so they go up to these farms that are really high up in the mountains, and they find these farmers who've been farming for generations, and they're like, this is how you do permaculture. And the farmers are like, this is what we've always been doing already. like they already know. And so coming into a new market, you'll always learn more from the people who are already there than you have to share. So it's really a two-way street. And so we really just came to Haiti curious, with some big ideas, but curious what the missing pieces in the market were and why solar wasn't happening there already. So we started talking to business owners and other solar providers. And so that's how we arrived at our specific business model.
That's really cool. If I could ask a follow-up question, I'm sure there was a lot of challenges you ran into when starting up 10Power. What was the first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing?
That's a good question. Our first project was the Deloitte Haiti water kiosks, and that's actually the picture that's behind me. So we financed 2 of their solar water purification centers, and it was that job that really helped to launch our business and helped us raise more capital. And it was funny because there was an actual physical roadblock when we were doing the installation. There was a storm that washed away the bridge that led to the site, and then there was this alternate route that kind of went through the forest, and then a gang took over that road. And so we couldn't get the materials out to the site. So it's funny when people ask about roadblocks, it's like we've actually had physical roadblocks to our projects getting done. So overcoming those difficulties and proving out that we actually could get projects done in this market, beginning to solidify our local partnerships and getting some initial traction with those first couple of projects, I think was when we knew it had legs. But one lesson that I learned from my previous startup was that I didn't incorporate my business until we actually got our first investment. So I had all the paperwork ready to go, but I didn't actually pull the trigger on starting the company until we actually had our first check from our first investor in hand.
Why did you wait to incorporate until you had the investment?
Because my first company, we incorporated and we were like, okay, we're going to be a Delaware C Corp. We're going to dot all the I's, we're going to cross all the T's. And then we wound up not fundraising for several years. And so we were just paying taxes on this legal entity. And so there was no point to it. So I decided to hold off on actually pulling the trigger until I knew it was real this time around.
Gotcha. Thank you for answering my question.
Thanks.
I have to say that I was always very impressed by Sandra when she was between the ages of 9 and 12 and in my classroom. I remember that she joined us. There were a group of 8 children. She was the only girl, 7 boys, all age 12. And we went to Washington, D.C. And, I knew that she would do something really important one day. But
we went to the Sierra Club headquarters.
Yes, we
remember that.
But I am flabbergasted and so delighted to see what you are doing. And as this young person, it just gives me so much hope that there's a way, that there is a way forward. And it's hard when you're a pessimist, but it's really lovely to see, and to see these young faces here tonight too. I'm so grateful that you are doing what you are doing.